Chapter 9, Off-World Others, Aralamb. There are some scientists at this point on Earth who are studying the Grand Procession. The Grand Procession is the mechanism by which every 26,000 years or so in Earth time, the whole of the universe does an energetic shift upward in frequency. This number can be broken down into its derivatives of numerical value to smaller shifts in the cycles of planets and solar systems throughout the universe. This procession exists in all of the strata of this universe as a kind of cleanup system which forces change, growth, or, in the alternative, destruction and rebirth of planets, civilizations, and species of organic and energetic nature. Within this universe, uncountable numbers of civilizations, species, planets, and planes of existence have grown up through and then been dismembered by the Grand Procession. There is no corner of existence in this universe which it is not within this mathematical and energetic procession. This procession and the shifting up of energies are not just unseen energy in process. It affects every corner of energy lowered in frequency to solids as you would perceive them. This shift upward in frequency affects every last molecule in the universe, lifting the whole of the experiential planes at the same time. Thus, even the lobby in which I reside will lift upward in frequency. This is a celebrated event in all timelines and corners of existence. The reason that I want you to understand this is that the Creator God is the originator. The Creator God is the only complete creator in the universe. Although the Creator allows many off-Earth species to learn and utilize the history, uses, and implementation of the movement and mixing of DNA for a species' inherent growth and evolution, those species are always, with no exceptions, required to be given the right to the knowledge only and only when the Creator God gives them permission to do so. The Creator God must give the permission to control, grow, or create any new species, new evolutionary lines of species, any implementation of the change of a species' DNA, or any cross-implementation which creates a new species by way of mixing one with another. This information is solely and fully the domain of the Creator God. This is a full and true law of the universe. Should a species determine to use its free will to step outside of this law of the Creator God, that species will be dealt with very aggressively and by particular means. Should the leaders of one species determine to take creation out of the hands of the Creator God for its own power, it has the free will to do so, but will be dealt with harshly by the Creator God. This is where the history of the modern Earth human begins. The human species was set to evolve on Earth for as many as 26,000 years to the 33333.9 multiplied number. Your species was meant to evolve with no intervention for another 45 million years from the year 2024 year of your knowledge. You were meant to be still a mix of Neanderthal and Savannah human to remain for many more cycles of the Grand Procession. This changed approximately 86,000 years ago. Your planet was visited by those who would ultimately show up in your mythology as the makers, the Nephilim, the giants, all of those supposed creators. The one point that was not lost in your supposed mythology was the thread of innate knowledge that there is one Creator God. That is the one truth that your young souls were fully tied to, and no amount of genetic intervention by the off-world species that arrived could disconnect you from it. I would have you know that removing your souls was tried by them as well. The very first genetic seeding was meant to disconnect your very young and not evolved souls from the Creator God and the lobby in order to create a fully organic but compliant slave worker species. Those failed. Creation in this universe was specifically set up so that no matter the youth of the organism upon its inception, there is a soul given. Upon the evolution of that species either being evolved naturally or seeded by a higher sentient being, that organism will have the one growing, evolving soul. To be clear, I am speaking of only those beings that presently or will have the ability to become sentient. I am not implying that a rock has a soul, but I am meaning that early humans who were preceding did have the ability to contain a soul from the Creator God. These preceding humans would have lived for many millennia more, as I have said, without full self-awareness, but eventually would have come into the complete sentience on their own. This did not happen on Earth due to the full intervention of two main off-world species, and one interceding species whose DNA can still be traced and seen upon the faces and within the DNA of all Earth humans to this day. Please understand that there is not one human being on Earth today who did not come from the mixing of these three off-world species and the presentient humans of ancient Earth. I'm going to outline the three major off-Earth species for you so that you can begin to understand the manipulation of your DNA, the manipulation of your species, some of the universal laws which were broken, the treaties that were agreed upon in rebuke of the broken laws, and the ultimate release of the modern human species upon your Earth, which began in 1961, and the changes that are underway now upon your planet. The Creator God put into place the restrictions on DNA splicing and the making of new species because inherent in the incarnation process is free will. With free will, every sentient being must make decisions every second about what they will do, what energy they will work with, how will they be in their corner of the universe. Will they be prey? Will they be predators? Will they rise above this kind of lesson and understand the true beauty and power that lies within the Creator God system for growth here in our universe? These are all questions which every soul must ask itself every second of its incarnation. This is the truth of the Creator God, no matter if you are a soul incarnate on Earth or a soul incarnate on the other side of the universe on a completely different planet as a sentient being who is not of any human origin. The law of free will is final. Because of this, the Creator God has in place some other hard and fast rules of being. The second rule is the creation of species rule. This is the rule that was broken so long ago on Earth. The three species of which I speak came to Earth and determined for reasons which I will outline to take the DNA and species altering into their own hands without the decree and good blessing of the Creator God for their own means. Not all of their reasons were nefarious. However, in the end, the new human species were, and consequently have been, subjugated and controlled. That epoch has ended, and at this time, the Creator God is releasing Earth humans to their own history. What humanity on Earth does from here will be of its own accord and within the universal laws of the Creator God. You as a species are finally becoming free from the control grid placed upon you many eons ago by those renegade off-world species who changed your DNA without the permission of and fully in opposition to the Creator God who lovingly made us all. A short history of the off-world others. Anunnaki. This is the most well-known species that is coming into your world's consciousness at this time of change. This race of beings is bipedal like humans, and they share much of the general building DNA of the early humanoids which resided upon Earth when they arrived in ancient history. The Anunnaki are a much longer-lived species than the Earth humans were, but had much less physical strength and were not able to procreate in the same manner as early and present-day humans. This was one of the reasons why they came initially with their science teams. Their initial visits to Earth were simply to take DNA samples, to study and possibly understand where their own breeding practices had failed them in their homeworlds. The Anunnaki homeworlds at that time were spread widely across the Milky Way galaxy, but were dwindling due to their free will decisions to make their lives much longer at the cost of their breeding and reproductive organs. Simply said, they had maneuvered themselves into a situation where they were genetically able to live many hundreds of Earth years, but were unable to reproduce as easily as they had in the past of their species. The Anunnaki had been given permission by the upper levels of the Creator God's energy workers to seek Earth out and study, by way of taking, without harm or manipulation, samples of the early human DNA for its reproductive qualities. At that point in Earth history, Earth's inhabitants had pristine DNA and were to remain so. The Anunnaki came to early Earth and found 3 specific populations of pre- and full humanoid Earthlings. They were evolving from apes and doing so at a very, very slow pace, which was as the Creator God wished it. Upon arriving to Earth, they determined that of the 3 species which were in small pockets on Earth, the Neanderthals and the Savannah types were the closest to their own base DNA, and determined to get samples from each. They were supposed to take a sample of hair and skin from each and leave. The visit was to last for what would have been 4 Earth days. Upon arriving to Earth, they were accompanied by what would have been considered in your day a military unit for their own protection. This was also deemed acceptable by the Creator God's Energetic Council. This same unit, not unlike those in your history, had come, unknown to the scientist, to also look at the planet's resource base. This was not deemed appropriate by the Creator God. In that time, many of their home planets were dealing with issues of atmospheric losses, which were creating the need to come up with new chemical and mineral combinations of spray mist, which would create a protective layer of shield around their planet's suns. This same technology is now being implemented on Earth and will end in the same manner as their own technology did so long ago on their own planets. You would know this as geoengineering. Because of this need for minerals, the military end of the expedition began mapping and searching Earth for gold, platinum, lead, copper, and silica deposits. Many were found, and at that point the Anunnaki sent word to the second off-world species for their assistance in mining the minerals from the Earth. The Sali. The Sali races are more closely related to humans in their DNA makeup. They were completely free of the reptilian and animal DNA model. In your present day on Earth, all of the Asian peoples would be the most closely related to the Sali races of antiquity. This species was highly traveled and strictly lived in a trade-based society. The Sali races were not a warlike species, but to this day still travel the Milky Way galaxy and currently inhabit more than 16 planets on the far side of the Milky Way galaxy from Earth. The Sali race is at this time restricted to those planets and has not been allowed the technical ability to travel through time portals due to the incidents in which they became entangled with the Anunnaki on Earth in that earlier time. After arriving upon ancient Earth, the Sali met with the Anunnaki military and crafted an agreement to quietly transport gold, lead, copper, silica, and any deep crystal deposits that were found off the planet. The Sali were also very involved with the Anunnaki and their ongoing DNA splicing within the early human populations. This DNA manipulation was in no way sanctioned by the Creator God and was carried out in the most secretive way. The Anunnaki and the Sali created a base at the Earth coordinates of what now would be called the cradle of life on Earth in northern Africa. The initial DNA splicing was attempted in a fully artificial embryonic state, whereby the Anunnaki would harvest the eggs from the early Savannah humanoid females. The egg would be fertilized with partially DNA scrubbed versions of the Anunnaki DNA. When I say partially scrubbed, I mean to describe the means by which they would literally need to clean or simplify their own DNA to remove many of the higher knowledge genes by which they had evolved, as they were not compatible with the unevolved human psyches. Many failures were endured by which an embryo might be started in an artificial womb, only to become too monstrous to live outside that artificial womb. At that time, there was a push by the Anunnaki military to create a worker who was acclimated to the mixture of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere, as many of the Anunnaki were at a disadvantage. Earth was not at the oxygen level that was optimal for them, thus leaving them unable to maintain long-term physical exertion. The Senshali were brought in to add their DNA to the possible mix as they were more humanoid within the DNA structure, and the experimentation continued with a bit more success. Still, the Anunnaki and Senshali scientists were trying, mostly in vain, to build and birth the human hybrids in an artificial womb. Part of the reason that they were doing this was that they did not want to build a humanoid slave species that would automatically be given a soul by the Creator God. If they were to build said slave species in an artificial womb, it would have no contact with the Creator God and thus be invisible to the creation. In the end, their greed for power and need to press forward compelled them to make compromises, and thus opened them to the attention of the Creator God. The tall whites, or Toshal. The species that is often referred to as the tall whites on Earth are not exclusively white in coloration, and at this point in the history of this universe are only about 68% corporeal in nature. The Toshal species are one of the oldest and most diverse humanoid-type species in the universe. The Toshal races have in great numbers evolved away from organic bodies and are mostly now at the levels of light beings who inhabit many planets and strata. The Toshal are also among the first species who were evolved to be a sort of universal council in service to the Creator God. The Toshal are and can be any color they choose in many shades. At this time in history that the Anunnaki and the Senshali were busy on Earth manipulating the DNA of the natural Earth humanoid species, the Toshal were called in by the Creator God to put a stop to the unsanctioned DNA manipulation that was going on, as well as to mitigate or manage the new species, that had been created. Upon their arrival to the planet, they began to put into place sanctions which would cease and desist the activities of the Anunnaki and Senshali species. There was also work done by the Toshal, which would incorporate their own DNA into the DNA structure of the new human, which had been seeded to Earth. The Creator God did not condone the action of the new species seeding on Earth, but nor does the Creator cut off those species which receive a soul. Humanity was born from these three species blending in the end with the Creator God's intervention through the Toshal. The Toshal have the DNA structure to allow them to have the skin color, facial features, and physical attributes of all of the humanoid species which dot the universe. The Toshal evolved to be the universal example of the O blood type on Earth. They can, as a species, literally mix their DNA with any human-like species who do not have a high animal mixture in their DNA. Humans on Earth today have a heavily weighted Toshal DNA mixture. The mixture of the DNA in humans of your time on Earth is roughly 83% Toshal, 16% Senshali, and 1% Anunnaki. There is obviously some deviation in these ratios over generations of humanity, but they are engineered to stay mostly in line with this ratio. The Anunnaki have a relatively high ration mix of humanoid reptilian DNA, and due to this fact, they were having a very hard time importing their DNA strands to the new humanoid they were attempting to create. The Senshali have a fully non-animal DNA mixture and therefore were very helpful to the Anunnaki in moving their engineered humans along. The Toshal are a species that will be seen in every color by the human eye. Black, white, tan, red, brown, luminescent, clear, and opaque are all colorings that you will see in the Toshal species. In some far reaches of our universe, they will be in bodies that are shades of red, blue, and green. Highly evolved Toshal soul sects have actually moved away from organic bodies and are fully light beings who appear opal in their energy sphere. Often, the Toshal will appear in physical form to a human in that human's mirrored skin color in order to create calm in that human. The one attribute that the Toshal do embody, which humans on Earth have noted, is that their eyes are a bit larger than that of Earth humans, and they are tall compared to Earth humans. The average Toshal woman might be 6'9" to 8'5" tall. Toshal men will averagely be between 12 and 15 feet tall. The Toshal species is also capable of unisexual physical orientation. As a group of universal travelers, the Toshal are often described by species on planets like Earth as the tall. You add the color red, black, blue, white, yellow, greens. They are the universal council order keepers in the most hands-on sense of the word. Upon their arrival to Earth, the Toshal immediately halted the experiments that the Anunnaki and Sali were conducting. Some numbers of highly Anunnaki-like new humans had already been genetically created and were being used as slaves. These humanoids consisted of more reptilian DNA strands than was accepted as the standard for the Creator God to have had souls imparted within. The Toshal set about creating a mixture of new Earth humanoids who were at the corrected 83:16:1 ratio of DNA. In doing so, they also determined that the very best way to clean the new humans of the Anunnaki DNA structure was to implant the mixture of DNA from Toshal, Sali, and Anunnaki males into the living womb of a clean, original savanna female Earthling. This procedure was successful in the very first attempt, and the program to raise the new humanoid species was underway with the approval of the Creator God. During this time, however, there was much infighting between the Anunnaki and the Toshal. The Anunnaki did not want to give up its specimens of the fully integrated Anunnaki human DNA species, and the Toshal began a concerted effort to find those Anunnaki hybrids in order to send them off Earth for safekeeping. The Toshal and the Anunnaki spent what would be ultimately 3,000 Earth years stewarding the new Earth seedlings through the earliest stages of your development. The Toshal stayed in this endeavor as emissaries of the Creator God, but the Anunnaki stayed as penance from the Creator God. The Sali were allowed to leave with other sanctions from the Creator God. Remnants of the Anunnaki and Toshal bloodlines still reside on Earth today. A covenant was signed by the Toshal and the Anunnaki, handed down by the Creator God, stating in its simplest form the following. The Anunnaki would stay in some capacity on the planet for however many eons it took to teach and guide the new species of humans forward in their evolution. 1. The Anunnaki were not to enslave the new species in any way, but guide them in their growth as souls living in the Creator God's universe. 2. The Anunnaki were to put into place a system by which the new species might govern itself as they grew and flourished. 3. The Anunnaki were to cease all DNA splicing, testing, creation of new species, or further integrating their own DNA into the human population as it moved forward. 4. The Anunnaki were prohibited from any kind of physical procreation with the new human species in any combinations. 5. The Anunnaki were to live in quiet and unassuming ways while reporting back to the Toshal after long intervals the evolution update of the new human species. 6. The Anunnaki, who had lifetime expectations of approximately 1,500 Earth years, were stripped of that lifespan by the Creator God and given 200 to 400-year lifespans on Earth in order to slowly have the final remnants of themselves, the Anunnaki, die off, leaving the new humans alone to evolve naturally. 7. The Anunnaki who arrived with the first exploring team of scientists and military were sanctioned and not able to leave the Earth for any reason until such time as was indicated by the Creator God. There were 18 of them. 8. The Anunnaki were not allowed to call in assistance from others of their species in order to destroy, exterminate, or expunge the new Earth species population. 9. The Anunnaki were not allowed to portray themselves as gods to the new species. 10. The Anunnaki were prohibited from aligning themselves with new kingdoms or as the communicator or spiritual bridge between the Creator God and the new species. 11. The Anunnaki were given thousands of years to accomplish the enlightenment and care of the new species on the small planet that they had encroached upon. 12. The Anunnaki would teach the new species about their true connections to the Creator God and the workings of the universe. And 13. The Anunnaki would only be allowed to leave the planet when these covenants were completed. This covenant was to be ended on the turn of the last Baktun. As you may realize in reading of the simplified covenant above, the Anunnaki held and kept none of their covenants with the Creator God. They instead made themselves kings of the continents, enslaved the populations of new humans, set up language, financial, and religious institutions in order to further control and enslave the new human species. They fought against each other and set up all manner of control systems in order to keep the new human species working for them in such ways that the true nature of the DNA that humans possessed, as well as their potential, would not come to light. The very DNA that had been imparted by the Toshal to Earthlings was the same DNA that was not within the Anunnaki species and kept them from being as powerful as the new Earth species they had inadvertently brought into being. The Anunnaki were left to shepherd a flock of newly souled beings who were many, many levels above them in energetic evolution. They determined that enslaving the species for eons was their only option for continuing their personal lines of genetics on the planet. This option and the covenant have now come to an end. The Creator God is stepping in now. Off-world DNA. Within the DNA of the Toshal is the ability to move, create, and form simple matter with sound and energy vibrations. Toshal are fully able to understand complex connections in the mathematics of the universe that we live in. They have an innate ability to communicate fully with mental, visionary, and non-local speech. The Toshal have evolved to have complete knowledge of the arts of what humans would call telekinesis, energy healing, physical and spiritual bilocation, precognitive ability to read the future possibility lines of any situation, the ability to astral travel energetically, healing abilities, physical interstellar travel, and many other abilities that humans are just now beginning to accept. The truth is that humanity on Earth is 83% Toshal in its DNA makeup. The massive amount of unused DNA in the brain of humans is fully being allowed to wake up. Earth humans were given all of this potential at the time of the corrective seeding by the Toshal. This genetic makeup is and was given freely. In order for Earth humans to begin to open and access these genetic markers, they need only to place their attention on the abilities. I mean this in the most literal way possible. All of the above-mentioned abilities in a species must first begin with the attention of the species on those abilities. If you believe that you have the ability to change matter with sound and energy vibration, then you can. Simple. After the initial movement by the Toshal of the newly corrective seeding, there were a number of radical changes upon the planet. It was determined by the Anunnaki who were left that they would carve up the planet and become ruling gods to the savages that the Creator God had left them with. Free will, as you know, is always held at the highest level of consideration, and so the Anunnaki used their free will to decide to disregard the covenant that they had agreed to. The continents were fought over and decided upon. It was also decided that the Anunnaki would need to breed with the new human species to continue its own bloodlines. The Anunnaki's lifespan had been dropped by over 1,000 years, and they wanted to set up a line of descendants, some of whom are still in the ruling classes today on Earth. As of 1961 AD, Earth time, the Creator God's covenant ended with the Anunnaki and their descendants on Earth. Being free of the covenant, it has been decided that the descendants of the Anunnaki are to leave the planet and release the enslaved populations of Earth. It is imperative that Earth humans understand that they are just one small inhabited planet in the universe and that they are now on the precipice of decision. It will very soon be an option for humans to migrate to other planets in the Milky Way galaxy that are inhabited by humanoids. There will be no need for any Earth human to stay within the present system if they should choose not to. The power brokers are failing and falling and quietly leaving the planet. The whole of the universe is shifting upward, and Earth is shifting up with it. In order to shift up through energetic evolution, the reality of your place in the universe must be fully grasped and understood. You are no longer in a position to pretend or go along with the systems that you have been sold for hundreds of years to keep you blind to your own power and growth potential. As you sit and read this, you have within you an 83% Toshal DNA line, which will and has marched you forward in evolution to this point. Now is the time to take the next step and trust in the innate knowledge that was imparted within you by the Creator God. Embrace the inner knowledge of who you really are. You are not a slave species.